it seemed like when we were sitting in Rob's office for, I think it was the Sunday game. I'm going to say this was the Sunday game against Texas. And we asked about Wheeler, and he gave us the next two starts, right? And I think it was like, okay, that's all that they plan on having him throw. And then they're going to bring him back. I mean, you really got that vibe from him, right? That was kind of the intention. Then Zack Wheeler goes down to Durham, and he makes a start for Lehigh Valley against the Durham Bulls. First two innings is really good stuff, even though the velocity is not there. And we're going to get into that in a second. And then the third inning kind of gets away from him. There's he hits a guy, walks a guy, has a bad defensive play in the outfield, and then he gives up a bomb. And all told, that's it. He only throws 3 innings, gives up 5 runs, whatever. You don't really put a lot of stock into that one inning and sit there and go, oh, he's just not ready. But I guess when you look at the velocity being where it is, and it's about 93 and a half at this point, usually over the last couple of years, his second start of spring, he's been in the 95 range, right? So that velocity is a tick low. And so now the Phillies have said they're going to give him an extra rehab start. And they got a little time because his rehab clock doesn't run out till April 26th. Does this worry you at all that he's not getting? I think he had 1 swing and miss on the fastball in those 3 innings against Durham. Is that a concern, or is Zack Wheeler at age 36 a guy who's going to know how to pitch even if his velocity is not back to where it needs to be?
I mean, I think some of this is expectations management, and you have to think of, this time, in September, you were thinking, okay, is he going to be back in a year? He's still way ahead of schedule. I didn't think we were going to see him, when they say thoracic outlet syndrome, I didn't think we were going to see him till like July 4th. So anything ahead of schedule is, I think, a bonus for them. I agree that they are prudent to take their time with this and to make sure that he's as built up as he needs to be. And so an extra start, I think they would probably have time to, looking at the schedule, they would probably have time to throw a third, maybe even a fourth start in there just before because I guess his days run out, or what, the 28th, 29th?
26th it is.
26th. Okay. So I don't think so. You might be able to jam an extra start in there on an even 5. Well, no, that would be the 3 that they already have scheduled. So I don't know that I'm terribly worried about it. I think there's going to be some variance in his rehab process. There have been other guys that have had, that have been hit around a little bit on their rehab, and it hasn't been that big of an issue. Some of the swing and miss stuff maybe is a little concerning. You have to remember that, I mean, it's AAA, so you're probably going to have guys that are attuned to be fastball hitters and not be able to handle the other stuff. So maybe that plays into it a little bit. I think you probably had to expect that not all of Wheeler's stuff was going to come back with him exactly the way that it was. And his stuff pre-injury, early last year, the last whatever period you want to say, has been some of the best stuff in baseball. You had to think that at his age and with this injury, if it ticks down a little bit, I don't know that that's a huge surprise. I don't know if that's a huge surprise even to Zack, to be honest, because, sometimes that happens with guys at this point. And certainly Wheeler is a guy that when he was with the Mets was throwing 99 and challenging guys up in the zone. And he's learned how to pitch as good, if not better, with different stuff. So I think that we're looking at a couple of different things that he's adjusting, right? I think he's adjusting to the post having one fewer rib, post having all this time off, he's had times where he's struggled in spring before and figured it out. And so I think there's a lot of kind of moving pieces for 2 data points to try and figure out, okay, this is where he's at. So I would not be worried quite at this point. I think part of that is that if the Phillies were in a position where they needed Zack Wheeler to come in and be Zack Wheeler of 3 years ago, then you'd be a little bit more worried. Realistically, you need Zack Wheeler to come in and be the third starter on this team. And or you probably what you're going to want to do is put him second so that you break up the lefties, and then you kind of go left, right, left, right. You don't need him to do too much. So I don't necessarily think that I would be worried quite yet. I don't know if you're ever going to get vintage Zack Wheeler again. But I don't know if you were going to get vintage Zack Wheeler again anyway at his age and stuff like that. And stuff was naturally going to tick down anyway. I think it's a little early to be too worried about that kind of stuff. And I have a lot of confidence in Wheeler as a pitcher to figure out how to pitch when the stuff changes.
Yeah, I'm mostly with you there. I guess the one thing that is worth noting is, he had to lose weight in order to have the surgery, and he came into spring training down, still below his normal playing weight. He is currently about 10 pounds lighter than he normally is. According to a story by Matt Gelb in The Athletic, I guess he talked to Dave Dombrowski out in Colorado. The Phillies training staff is working with Wheeler to put that weight back on, and they feel like once he does put those 10 pounds back on, that tick in velocity will come back and get it back.
He does look physically a little different. Like
he does look thin.
He looks thinner. He looks.
Yeah.
I don't want to say he looks. I don't want to say that he looks older, but he looks more. I don't know what the right. He looks a little different than he used to. I think he used to have a huge quiet presence in the room, and I think part of that is that he's just in there a little bit less because of the rehab and because of all those things, and because we've gotten used to the room a little bit without him. But I think that's all possible to change once he gets back in the groove, once he gets back in the majors, and in that kind of vein that he always was. I wouldn't be surprised if that changes. And, that 10 pounds, and I'm sure there's some muscle loss and stuff like that comes with not being active and not being able to go through the regimented routine that he has had for years, as someone who, he always took great care of his body and still does. So I imagine that's something that's subject to change as he gets more back into the swing of things fully.
Yeah. So it looks like he's going to be, we had a little bit of maybe premature excitement that he would be here by mid-April. It's now probably looking like late April, which, as you pointed out earlier, is still way ahead of schedule. So I'm not too concerned. It's just going to be interesting to see what that velocity looks like, 2 starts from now. And say, and is he maintaining it? Because they're also building him up, right? So it's not like, okay, he starts throwing 95, 96 again. You're like, oh, all right, he's getting there. But what does that fastball look like in, say, a 5th or 6th inning versus a 1st inning? And that's another thing that you got to kind of look at and say, oh, is he able to maintain that velocity once he gets
and how well he works everything off of that, and how much, his curveball is more devastating when he's sitting 97, and you have to account for that, than if he's sitting 94 and you have to, adjust down from that. It makes it just elevates everything.